Don Rodrigo, and then I'll turn it over to you, because I want to talk about the organizational alpha side of this. You're talking about the infrastructure and technology. Curious as to your thoughts, day one for a business like yours, what is sort of the necessary table stakes to even enter the game and have a reasonable shot of being successful?
It really depends on, what you're doing and at what. What really matters is probably revenue more than AUM per se, right? But we were around 100 million at initially, and you can run a business like this at that stage where you have kind of one client and you're not doing any kind of marketing and you're on a ground up, what do you really need and what don't you need kind of basis. Like you can run that kind of thing for $1 million a year, right? You need $1 million a year of fixed revenue.
But what about from like a technology perspective?
Yeah.
Like, what do you day one starts, assets hit, you're starting to get the revenue. What are you building with your blank canvas in front of you?
Sure.
Bloomberg
Yeah. So
machine
and all that happened before. All that happened before, obviously, because part of the thing with big boy institutional due diligence is that they don't do that, and you say, right. I promise I'll build it, right? So that's what I was on non-compete for all of 2016, doing that, right? But yeah, I mean, think of again, it depends on exactly what space you're in, but for someone like us, you need a proper full historical and real-time data environment for dealing with options and derivatives across the asset classes that you're involved in, right? And you need the risks, the risk capabilities and the position management capabilities and the execution capabilities associated with that, right? So there's certain things that you can buy, right? You don't, you always buy what people usually call an OMS or an order management system, whether or not it actually manages your orders, right? So, a Bloomberg AIM or an Escastle or whatever it is, it has a bunch of embedded accounting functionality. So those kind of things, like your accounting systems, right? You're picking things that are going to work with your other systems as well as you can, and you're buying that. But all of your research and data type of infrastructure, that's really, what you do as a manager. And there aren't any kind of, you're choosing vendors for data and so forth, right? But there's not going to be any kind of prepackaged analytics solutions that make sense for someone who really what you do is very specific, very bespoke strategy work in the space, right? And so all of our infrastructure is in Amazon. You have big fast databases, and you have big networks of compute capabilities that can spin up as needed, and you have your big end of day processes and their whole dependency tree, and you have your intraday environment that's updating all of your research and all of your signals and all of your risk components, right? And that, if that's not, you don't pass institutional due diligence until that's all there and can be demoed live and works.
And that's all built in-house, you're all developing it in-house. Is it like, are you a programmer, Ben, or do you have
the entire front office team? So we now have a head of technology also, but we're all programmers.
Right. Sorry, Scott, I interrupted you.
I was just going to drive home the point. Like, obviously, you buy what you don't want to build, right? Like, we're not going to build an accounting system or whatever. But the unique thing about QVR was that Benn's been managing this set of strategies for a very long time. And it was, okay, I have a blank canvas. How does Ben want to build, his infrastructure from a risk management perspective, from a trade implementation perspective, portfolio management perspective, from the ground up, and not try to fit what he's doing into a prepackaged system. And I think that was the biggest, a big differentiating factor for that technology, step forward.
Yeah. Well,
yeah. That's a very good point. I mean, in some sense, some version of this infrastructure has been built and rebuilt over the years, right? And it sounds painful to say like, oh, you rebuild it, but actually, it's a natural evolution, right? And in this context, especially this time around, you can build it much, much better. 10, 12 years ago doing this stuff, you had server rooms, you were writing C# code and reinventing the wheel across all kinds of stuff because there wasn't really good open source, right? And you had just much less of the world that venture capitalists have wonderfully subsidized, small technology companies on providing all of these, free or very cheap resources and the Amazon cloud and so forth, right? So it's a great environment to be able to revisit, how would I do this better?
With better, or more. You said you code in Python, or
a lot of what we do is
there's
Python.
Other code. There's just better code that you can do. We've done it over and over again, where you have the option of having this. You've patched up the old infrastructure so many times that to fix it the way you want to requires, it's a massive technical debt, and you just gotta. You can scratch and rebuild with better code, better understanding what you want to get out of it, and just a much more streamlined option for sure.
Yeah, what I would say,
and I guess having a big investor allowed you to take your time to do that right.